Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Invitation to a Conversation. My guest today is Cedric Mance, attorney for the Mance Legal Firm in Savannah, Georgia. So stay tuned and get some good update on this information. Hello, Mr. Mance. How you doing today?
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm so glad that I was able to get you on. It's hard to um, pre-market someone coming on the show and then they don't come on, but
Right.
you kept your word and you're here.
Yes, ma'am.
I, I will compromise. So, Mr. Mance, for those who don't know you, including myself, tell us who you are.
My name is Chadrick Mance. I'm an attorney. I'm a trial attorney. We help injured people, particularly in the state of Georgia. I'm a former adjunct professor, uh, president of the Savannah NAACP, former president of the Savannah Port City Bar Association, which is the organization over African American attorneys, and occupied a number of roles. We travel all across the country talking to lawyers, for example, showing them how to do certain things for their clients and put together cases. And so I have a number of different hats that I wear, but in this particular scenario, I'm representing the aggrieved victims, or at least some of them, of the Sapelo Island gangway collapse.
Okay. And before we get into that particular topic, I would like to discuss some of your background so we can know how good of an attorney you are. Um, you say you're a community advocate, born leader, and an emerging trailblazer. Was being a lawyer your first choice, career choice?
It was not actually. At some point, I went to Morehouse College, and there was a choice I had between going to work as an investment banker and going to law school. And I always thought, my dad would always tell me, look, you'd be a great lawyer. And I met some brothers that were going to Harvard Law School, Yale Law School, and really doing some things that I never really could have imagined. And I said, well, look, my freshman year, I said, I'm going to find out whether I like this or not. And there was a program at the time that allowed budding future law students to go to a simulated law school for about 9 weeks, and it would be totally funded if you had good grades and you were a minority. And my freshman year of college, I got a chance to do that. And so, in a very limited way, for about 9 weeks, I actually took very limited law school courses and realized that was what I wanted to do. In fact, that was in Villanova, Pennsylvania.
All right now.
And I owe my legal career in large part to the dean of admissions, or former dean of admissions at Villanova Law School, Dean William James, a brother who also is a Morehouse graduate and who was the first law clerk for the late federal district court judge Horace Ward. So I'm a product of people pouring into me early, and that decision happened because there were other people from my community that said, you can do this, and encouraged me, and that's why I'm here.
And that's a wonderful thing that you took that opportunity and listened to them and follow that destination. You said your vision is using our laws to make society's crooked places straight. Can you explain that?
Sure, you and I, Miss Bailey, are here because, in large part, of the court system. Imagine for example, world where Brown versus Board of Education did not come down in '54 and integrate our facilities. Imagine a world where the Civil Rights Act of 1964 didn't come down and say, hotels and restaurants had to make public accommodations for us. The law has been a good thing and it has made the crooked places straight, but it has also made straight places crooked. And so, what I think the law should be is a force of good, and it should be a force of equality. It should be a force of parity and progress. And my career really has been devoted to making sure that that happens.
Hmm. And in the large scheme of things, sometimes we have to continue to work on making those crooked places stay straight because
Yes, ma'am.
sometimes it can get out of alignment.
That's it. That's it.
And your mission is a trial lawyer who represents people injured by the negligence of others. Your decision to be an injured trial lawyer. Other attorneys ask you to speak about trial advocacy and personal injury. Explain what you speak about trial advocacy and personal injury.
So since around 2000, really 2016 or 15, I've been talking to lawyers. And so it's kind of like a professor will get asked to present a paper on a research topic. Lawyers get asked to present and do extensive research on legal topics. And so for my age bracket, we suspect at this firm that I'm probably one of the most highly sought out speakers on a national level in personal injury. I'm 37 years old. And so I've spoken on everything. For example, in 2016, we talked to the annual convention of lawyers for the State Bar of Georgia about how to sue the government. We spoke at the National Trial Lawyers Summit year after year on pretty much everything from legal ethics to cross examination to how do you put a person on the stand that you represent and so they can give testimony that's persuasive to a jury. So you name it, and what I do, I've talked about, good or bad, good or bad. In fact, this month and last month are the really two of the only months this year that I have not been traveling speaking to other lawyers. So I'm always on the road.
Is there is there how should I put there? Is there a running theme to every personal injury case that seems to go along with everybody's personal injury case that comes before you? That is a
Every
common
case is
thread.
different. Every case is different, but there is the theme of making somebody whole. We live in a world where there's a lot of, you know, conjecture and advertisement and um, joking around about stuff in personal injury. But if somebody's really hurt, it'll change your whole world. It'll change how you, for example, view yourself. It'll cause depression. It'll change how family members and friends view you. And so that one thing is to try to restore the person through the legal system as best we can to try to make them whole, and then two, to make the world safer. So I guess there are two big themes, not just one.
Okay. And as I said in the beginning, you said you're a community advocate, a born leader, and an emerging trailblazer. So, right now, on this particular topic, we're going to talk about your community advocate. Um, uh, in your bio in paragraph 4, you spoken and written about everything from how to cross-examine a biomechanical engineer to how the federal motor carrier safety regulations apply to trucking cases. Can you explain the cross-examination to how cross-examinations differ among other cases? Is there something in particular?
Yes, ma'am. So a cross examination essentially is when you have a witness that is saying something bad for your case, and that witness is damaging your client's case, damaging your case, and you have to attack the substance of the testimony or the credibility. And every cross examination is different. Many lawyers will make the mistake of saying, oh, this is a driver. We cross examine the driver the same way. But for example, two different drivers may have two different speaking abilities, or they may lie differently on the stand, or they may have nervous tics, or one might be more articulate and persuasive or credible than another. And so, what we try to do is to study the individual that's examined and to prepare with extensive background research prior to the examination. But when you examine a witness, your job is to clearly, in an organized way, attack their point, but also use that witness to make your point. And that's probably the most important thing, to use that witness to support your case as best you can. And it gets more complex from there. A biomechanical engineer is a person who has got a PhD and can actually judge the amount of force going through your body. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that cross-examination in large part would depend upon principles of physics and math and other things, science. And so you've got to be solid on the foundation so you can understand how to interact with the witness, but you also need to be solid on other things you can use to attack the witness. And so every cross-examination is different for every witness, but one theme that runs replete through everything is preparation, preparation, preparation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
You speak in paragraph 5 of your bio. You speak to community organizations and educational institutions about the law. Explain specifically what type of law do you speak to communities and education institutions.
Essentially, it's about what we do, what I do. Um, and people think of injury in a very narrow way. They may say car accident, but the national opioid litigation, that was personal injury litigation. George Floyd, that was personal injury, wrongful death litigation. When a bridge collapses, like the bridge collapsed in Baltimore, that's personal injury litigation. And
Mm-hmm.
so it really touches a broad array of things. If there's a baby, for example, that is born with an umbilical cord wrapped around the poor baby's neck, that's personal injury litigation. And we know from our community, Black women die giving birth disproportionately, particularly here in Georgia. If a physician doesn't do what the physician's supposed to do, that's personal injury, medical negligence. So we empower the community to really understand what the issues are, and then try to make these legal concepts everyday concepts,
Oh,
so that the law is not a foreign body, if that makes sense.
okay. Now, the second section is we're Allen Community Advocate and we're now into Born Leader. You said that you lead uh, legal thought leaders, paragraph 6 in your bio, you lead legal thought leaders and diversity and inclusive committees. Can you explain your born leader? How did you know that you were a born leader? How did you feed upon that? And how did you come to that conclusion?
All these things in my bio, for the most part, people have referred to me as. And so I try to kind of, in my bio, mirror what I feel folks would say about me. But essentially, on the leadership level, for diversity and inclusion, we're always pushing for that. I was selected by the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association to be in their leadership and advanced development class, which is essentially when they pick the best up and coming trial lawyers to begin to train them to head the organization. And one of the things that I was consistent about in my class was saying, look, if you want better lawyering, you have to have diverse lawyers, plain and simple. Uh, I was selected later to be a member of the Melvin Belli Society, and that's an elite group of lawyers, law professors, some of the best lawyers in the world. And there, I'm a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee leadership team, and we push to make sure African American lawyers are participating at a high level, particularly when it comes to talking about advanced topics. And so everywhere I go, my job is to really open doors for other people so that the pathways and the glass ceilings won't be as obstructive as they used to be.
Hmm. And I can't think of any other glass ceilings that we have to break, but I'm sure there's some more out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Now, the last one was an emerging trailblazer. And as you mentioned before, you said that you were the president of Savannah's NAACP, tackling some issues impacting equity for minorities. Can you explain that?
So
Yes.
Savannah NAACP was founded in 1913, uh,
Mm-hmm.
approximately less than a decade after James Weldon Johnson came down here and he formed the NAACP. But it's a decade after the big NAACP was formed, or a little under a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been here for a while, and it's the third largest in our state with over 400 members. So some things we do is we make sure that we register voters. We make sure we have political forums at every level of government. For the first time, we had a gubernatorial debate where Stacey Abrams came down. We invited all candidates, but she showed up and she delivered a message to the body. We, for example, get the message of voter empowerment out in jails and with community organizations. And so we've been aggressive on that front. We talk about redistricting, which is when they redraw the congressional lines. We are active on practically every level, and this NAACP actually has made sure that, as best we can, that we protect civil rights here in Savannah. And our members have gone on to be mayors. In fact, every African American mayor here in Savannah was a member. They've gone to be legislators at a high level. We've had at least four chairmen of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus come from our membership base, and that's the largest black caucus in the world of elected officials. And so we on the ground all the time, making moves, and it was an honor to have served as president of the NAACP.
Okay, thank you. Like that answer. So you were the former president of the Port City Bar Association. Explain that.
That's just the organization of African American lawyers here. So, um,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right. So we're moving down to the and let me say this, Mr. Mance attends First African Baptist and the Tapestry Church in Savannah, Georgia. And Mr. Mance believes that the law is a tool meant to influence people to help others while creating a safe society that expands the rights of citizens. He has devoted his practice and work to fighting for the seriously injured and downtrodden. And that will segue into our next topic, which is Sapelo Island. Where were you and how did you hear about the incident on Sapelo Island?
I was asleep. I had, I know, I had a long week. Sometimes we wake up early, I mean, and go to sleep late at our firm. And my wife woke me up, and I said, "What is going on?" I thought it was an emergency, and indeed it was, but just not the type that I thought. She said, "Look at this," and she gave me her phone. I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Do you see that?" I said, "I do." She said, "You know, we gotta figure out something." And the way the universe works, by the time I could figure out something, somebody had already begun to call me and say, let's figure something out with this. And so I got brought in to help investigate what's happened and help folks. And that was really the beginning of that. I really didn't know honestly
Right.
what, but I knew both on the NAACP side, we'd have to be some support, even if I wasn't lawyering. And I knew that as a lawyer, if called, I had a duty to do something about what had happened.
Mm-hmm. So why did you decide to take this particular case?
Some of my friends were out there,
Mm.
and I won't betray their trust. Um, but my dear friends were there,
Mm-hmm. Were
and
they part of the accident or they were a part of the cultural festival day?
let's put it this way: they were there, and I won't say much more from that.
Okay.
Um, and it really hit home. And
Mm-hmm.
with the NAACP, we're here at least, and personally, I am deeply engaged with some of the activities in connection with the Gullah Geechee community. And when when that happened, I knew there was a larger history, a larger force that
Mm.
that was at work than just the collapse.
Right.
And the way that it happened was almost a call that you got to do something. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yes, ma'am.
What What was your first observation when you got to Sapelo Island?
I thought that this was a community in devastation. That really there was so much history bound up in the island
Mm-hmm.
and so little time to get it out that we
Mm-hmm.
needed to be very strategic and pointed in how we're going to approach this because there are generations of folks that have been impacted by this and by forces that were at work long before this happened. And so,
Mm-hmm.
really, my first urge was to listen, to hear, to kind of figure out where the community organizers needed help,
Mm-hmm.
um, and also to help the friends that had enlisted my participation as best I could,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of stay prayerful and go from there.
And so when you got to Sapelo Island, what did you see?
You see people everywhere. I mean, first of all, you got people that are going to churches for help, trying to kind of figure out what has happened. The church was a saving force.
Mm-hmm.
You have reporters everywhere. Um, you have law enforcement trying to figure out what's going on. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of moving parts. Now, at this point, I'm not on the island because we got to get on the ferry to get there. We don't go to
Right.
the island until the island's actually opened back up. But on the mainland, it was chaotic to say the least.
How soon after the accident did you get there?
Gosh, I mean, it wasn't the day of, but I think we started getting
Okay.
calls the next morning.
Okay.
So it
Okay.
was relatively soon that we got calls to come help as best we could.
I seen parts of the original press conference that happened. How many other law firms are involved in this case besides you?
Oh man, there's probably at least a half a dozen firms at least.
Okay. And how much, this might be sound repetitive, but what do you know about Sapelo Island and have you been there before this incident happened?
So I've not actually been to the island before, but was very acquainted with the history. Um, I have a colleague and friend that has represented the island in some other litigation, let's call it that. Uh, everybody in the organizing community here in coastal Georgia really understands the dynamic of the island. How for years land has been taken away. The right to participate in government seems to be diminished in some ways, and a number of other forces have really put themselves at play. So I was familiar with the island, had never actually gone over there, but through close friends and circles that always come back and forth, vicariously, I felt like I had already been.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when I did see the press conference, um, somebody mentioned that they had complained about repairing that deck before because they said there was a gap already between the deck and the gangway. How much can you tell us about that?
This is a kind of a pending matter. Since it's already in the public light, I can tell you that there is some evidence that this was not a one-time occurrence, uh,
Mm.
and that is based on our investigation so far.
What do you mean it's not a one-time occurrence about the break, the gangway break falling?
That there were problems there with the gangway,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that something should have been done about it early.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it was last year. I don't think it was this year. I believe it's last year. I had a guy on here about the litigation of Sapelo Island. I've been over there a few times. It's a beautiful island, blue water, white sand, beaches, and everything. For their cultural day, and I know that they are in very many litigations of that property over there, as you said. Do you think that the aluminum was the best material to use for that walkway for daily use? Because they have people go over there for that church anniversary, and they have heavy equipment and everything like that. So do you think that gangway was made with the best material for that type of back and forth use of that ferry every day?
Let me say this: there's a confluence of things that might have caused this, and I
Mm-hmm.
think at this stage we're ruling out things, right? And so I don't want to make a statement about what's the best and what's not the best until we got
Okay.
all the experts look at everything. What I will tell you is that a gangway is not supposed to collapse under those circumstances. I think
Mm.
that's self-evident. And what I'll also tell you is people look at it and they say, "Oh, it's just a dock." But imagine that your town was an island.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you could get in was through that dock, and the only way you could
Mm-hmm.
get out was through that dock. That
That's
wasn't a
right.
dock, that was a road. So imagine you're driving on what's the highway in your town, Miss Bailey? The main one.
17.
17. You're driving on 17, right? You're going home. That's the only way home, and the road collapses on you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened to those people that day. Our people. Our
Mm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
Their road collapsed on them and their guests,
Mm-hmm.
and it's devastating. So there are a number of forces at play. We know it should not have happened, and we are extensively ruling out what they could be. Won't comment on that until
Okay.
there's more done, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, yes, that makes sense. Um, can I want to ask you this, and you can tell me. It was to my understanding that I heard during that press conference that it was repaired. It was repaired again in 2021. That particular gangway.
There have been numerous efforts at repair. Um, of course, there's supposed to be some inspections and some maintenance of any gangway. Um, Question is, how effective were those? what was the process that was undertaken.
That's
And
right.
these are some of the things that we're looking at. I don't want to get too much into it because,
Okay.
again, we're still this kind of more active matter.
Okay. Okay. Now let me ask you this. How will you go about holding the people or business or organization accountable for this tragedy?
You know,
I
I mean
don't know if I asked it.
that presumes somebody is accountable. I think that's a pretty safe presumption. But we're going to use every means possible. We're going to use
Mm-hmm.
every legal and ethical means possible to make
Mm-hmm.
people account for the travesty that happened, and also to prevent
Mm-hmm.
other travesties from happening that are similar. But imagine you've got a coastal Georgia that has docks
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, right? You got docks with public parks. You've got docks on private lands. You've got docks at beach houses, right? You've got docks at marinas.
Mm-hmm.
The possibility for danger is extremely high if we don't keep up these gangways. And
Mm-hmm.
so we believe we'll save a lot of lives in and outside our community if we can set the appropriate standard for accountability, because it's going to deter behaviors that are unsafe from occurring again in the future. And
Mm-hmm.
so we intend to use every legal means and every ethical means to do so. And it's going to take more than just, a case to do that. It's going to take, legislators doing the right thing. It's going to take
Yes.
local elected officials doing the right thing, having what I call political courage to speak truth to power. It's going to take lawyers concerned with more than money. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, money sometimes is the only tool we have,
Mm-hmm.
um, but you got to be concerned with the greater good as well, and that should be your guiding force. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
take community putting pressure on folks. So we want to use every tool at our disposal to be able to get justice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we can see if that exit or that gangway was just used periodically, but it is used because children go to school, people go to church, and people visit, and so it's used every day. So it has to be something much stronger to hold the human body and equipment to go back and forth. I understand that, yes. um so can you give me a precise count of the number of people, do you know, that fell into the water, and how many survived and how they're doing now?
Well, I won't give you a precise count for different reasons, but what I will tell you is that it was certainly more than a dozen. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, people died. Some live. Many are having problems sleeping at night, problems with anxiety, so what appears to be PTSD-like symptoms. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then some have sustained injuries that are relatively serious.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so it just kind of runs the gamut. And then you've got, grown men who are not the type to cry. Let's put it that way.
Oh,
They can't
yes.
seem to hold themselves together as a result of what they experienced. Um, so, yeah.
That is so unfortunate because, as you said, some people are not going to ever go across there again when they fix it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Ever
ma'am.
again. And some people who haven't been over there, who wanted to go over there at some time or another, are not going to go now, because of that fear of that happening. Um, and PTSD is certainly going to play a part in this.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, Yes. So, Okay. Okay. So is it anything else um that you can tell us about that situation that I haven't asked yet?
I just tell the public, and I don't want to suggest how you should think about this. This is just one perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think Sapelo Island is deeply important to American history, but certainly African American history.
And the Gullah Geechee.
Island that was founded
Mm-hmm.
after
Mm-hmm.
Reconstruction by newly freed slaves in an effort
Mm-hmm.
to continue their own liberation. It
That's
was
right.
run by newly freed slaves. It was managed by newly freed slaves. It was cultivated and developed by newly freed slaves. Now, imagine this, though. When they gave the island away, it was throwaway land, infested with mosquitoes. You know, in other words, this was impossible land to cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the will and the ingenuity of our people led to the beautiful island that everybody covets now. Now
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
people outside of our community want to build on the island and assert dominion and control over the land that the sons or the ancestors of our community cultivated, right? And
That's
so
right.
their sons and their daughters now are having a battle to try to keep this property, and some of them, others, are selling off the property.
Yes.
And so it's much deeper than just the gangway. If
Yeah, it is. It
the
is.
gangway is a road, and a road is a way that we engage in commerce in and out. Okay, if we can
Mm-hmm.
make sure the gangway is not functioning, we can discourage travel on and off the island. Uh, and that has an impact to the people on the island. And I think the people on the
Mm-hmm.
island, our people, it's not a
Mm-hmm.
separate community. Our people are saying,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to what goes on here because this is a microcosm for every community of difference, not just African American
Mm-hmm.
community. They can come in and appropriate your resources and take away your rights slowly and invert
Mm-hmm.
and subvert the democratic process. And then all of a sudden, by the way, just not maintain your road. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then this gangway collapses and people die. But the culture of Sapelo was struggling to live long before
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Um,
yes. To
and
my
but we've
understanding.
kept it alive, though. We have kept it alive, and we're fighting vigorously to keep it alive. But this is an important case to our history. Don't let it be
Yes.
swept under the rug. Read about Sapelo Island, and I think you'll be deeply moved, especially in the African American community, to try to do something and pay attention to this issue. So anyway,
So what's going to happen is just by this gangway, you all going to have to implicate the previous incidents that was going on prior to the gangway because it's going to kind of feed it into that. Because when I said that gentleman came on a year ago, they were first talking about how the people who were still living over there would get increased property taxes in the thousands of
right,
dollars to
right.
sway them out of that community. And as you said, some people who were born and raised in that community couldn't afford it, so they did sell. And the ultimate goal is for that island to be gentrified. But the people who were the generations of people that are live there and from there, they want to develop it. You know what I'm saying? So it can keep on being flourished to the
Right.
way of living nowadays. And so, and I hope that they get this done because there's been a years and years of battle, and I
Yeah.
hope it can be reconciled.
But we might be weary, but we're not worn out.
I know that's right.
You
I
know,
know that's right.
we're not worn out. And let me say this: if the people of Sapelo Island had not cultivated that island, nobody would want it.
That
And
there you go.
if we
There you
built the
go.
island, if we built the island, we can protect the island. And I believe that all this happened for divine reason. It happened at
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest events that the island has had in recent years, if not the biggest. It happened
Mm-hmm.
with people from all over, from
Mm-hmm.
different states, busloads
Mm-hmm.
of people. It happened during an election year. Now imagine this:
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
when the we could have had our first African American woman as president. Could have, could have.
Yes.
And all I'm saying is this is a culmination of something deeper. And I think sometimes divine forces can speak to us and tell us, get up and do something.
Yes.
And you don't have to
Yes.
be a lawyer. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a professor. In fact, those are the least important people. We're the least important people. The most important people are the community members that are concerned, that know their power of civic engagement and can do something.
Mm-hmm.
There's an illusion that the lawyers are the powerful ones. We're not. It all depends on you. It all depends on you. So moving forward, I think we need to pay attention that this is a national and a global issue, because it will.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to
Mm-hmm.
pay attention that we protect lives because we will. And we need to pay attention that we protect our culture because we shall and we must.
Mm.
And so, anyway, that's my take on it.
And if the people of Sapelo had their own resources to develop the way they want to develop, as that gentleman was saying at that press conference, we wouldn't be having this. And so they don't have the resources to, the financial resources to build as they want to build. So it's being held back for a certain to wear them down. So I understand it. I understand it. And I hope that gets that resolved because, as you said, that land belongs to them.
It does, and it belongs to our ancestors. And
Mm-hmm.
remember, land for so many years, and it may still be, was the fundamental basis of wealth. And so
Mm-hmm.
now we have the one percenters, but imagine that land was the bridge between being a one percenter and somebody that is just wiped off the economic map. And that's what that island was. It was a method of culture. It was a method of wealth transfer from generations. It was a method of, you reap what you sow, you plant it, you
Mm-hmm.
eat it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a method of let's not forget where we come from. So historical
Mm-hmm.
preservation. It was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things, and it still is, by the way.
It still is.
It
Mm-hmm.
still is. But if we
Mm-hmm.
let this island get appropriated and misused and treated like a second class citizen, then we're really allowing all groups of difference to be misused and mistreated and relegated to a class of second class citizenship. And last I checked, in 1954, with Brown versus Board of Education, that should have gone away a long time ago. But it's trying to.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to get engaged and we got to get in the game on this, one way or the other. I don't care where you are. We're calling you. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
what you look like. We're calling you because it's time.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Mance, on that, now let me ask you this. As you go forward, can you come back on and give us an update as often as you see fit to how Sapelo Island is coming along?
It'd be my pleasure. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you for that. I would like, because people who don't live over there now, they still have family over there, and we want to know how they're going along and how they are processing. Because
Yes, ma'am.
gentrification is a real thing.
Absolutely. I mean,
It's
I
a real
drove through
thing. So,
Philadelphia
Mr. Mance,
a
to
year
end our
ago.
conversation,
I drove through
what would you
Philadelphia
tell?
a year ago, and I saw gentrification in your city, Miss Bailey. That's all I wanted to add. You there?
Okay, there we go. There we go. Mr. Mance, to end our conversation, what would you tell somebody who wants to be a trial lawyer, and how would you fit in community advocate, a born leader, and being an emerging trailblazer?
I would tell you to not forget where you come from. Um, that is special. You were placed in the arc of history where you were and are for a reason. And that's so you can help address the things that you thought were problems. I'd tell you that you got to work hard for anything that's worth having. And I heard a friend told me not long ago, this is not an original quote from me, but new levels, new devils.
There you
You're
go.
gonna always have haters. But Cat Williams is one of my favorite comedians. He says, "Look, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to pick up the phone right now. I want you to
Mm-hmm.
call your biggest hater, and I want you to
Mm-hmm.
tell them, thank you, because
Mm-hmm.
hate makes great.
Mm.
Makes
Mm-hmm.
great. And if you can push
Mm-hmm.
through it and accomplish your mission, then all of the haters in the world cannot stop you. And so you got to work hard, stay focused, not forget where you're coming from or where you've come from, and continue to address the things that are the problems in front of you using your talent, your skill, your calling, and your abilities."
Mm. Thank you. I like that. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
That's why Michael Jordan was so good. He had a lot of haters, and that
Yes, ma'am.
motivated him.
Yes, ma'am.
So, to my invitation to a conversation community, that's the end of this conversation with Mr. Mance. And he said he will come back and give us an update periodically on the Sapelo Island incident. And until tomorrow at 11 a.m., I'll have Miss Patrice Ross on to tell us about being a doula. So until then, have a blessed Friday and a blessed weekend. Bye bye. Don't go nowhere. So